Hello, everyone. I am Xenia Beltrán, Head of Big Data at Life Supporting Technologies at Politécnica University of Madrid and Coordinator of the PharmaLedger Project. I would like to thank all the people that have joined us today and are sharing with us this panel on applying blockchain for end-to-end clinical supply management in this great virtual summit organized by Scope. I am going to start this presentation by introducing what is the PharmaLedger project, what are we doing, and in which areas of healthcare, so-called use cases, we are applying blockchain for generating value, privacy, security, and source of trust of the data for different stakeholders through the upstream and downstream path in the pharma and healthcare supply chain. After, I'm going to pass over the discussion panel. So let's start. What's PharmaLedger? PharmaLedger is a project that is sponsored by the Innovative Medicines Initiative, which is known in the European Commission as IMI, as well as by the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Associations, also known as EFGCP. PharmaLedger is a 3-year project that started in January 2020, aiming at having the vision to benefit the entire healthcare ecosystem, going from the pharma manufacturers to the patients. For this project, we have put together a consortium of 29 public and private entities, including global pharmaceutical companies, technical partners, universities, research organizations, hospitals, and patients' organizations. Our goal as a project is that under one consortium, the 29 partners collaborate to create an agile and secure blockchain-enabled platform that supports, on the top of it, decentralized and trustless healthcare solutions by nature, which will share data in a way that data and processes, on one hand, are supported by a legal and ethical framework to be compliant to current and envisioned standards. Thus, the data and processes are privacy enabled by design. This means ensuring privacy and confidentiality of PharmaLedger data and transactions, which at the same time will build patient empowerment strategies, shifting the balance of care toward the community and patients, producing meaningful patient-centered outcomes. On the other hand, allow security of information and greater access across the use cases, thus making that data and processes are linked together under the PharmaLedger platform services, coupled with a sustainable vision underpinned by an effective governance approach. Looking at this and at our objectives, we really can say that in PharmaLedger, we're working in rethinking trustable and sustainable environments for exchanging data in a healthcare ecosystem. How are we doing this? To reach our objectives, we have designed a 3-year roadmap. Currently, we are starting our 2nd year of the project, where we focus on the development and deployment of the use cases solutions, while also finishing the deployment of the PharmaLedger platform, which has been designed during the 1st year of the project. Further, we really will move toward our 3rd year, where we will be doing all the validation and evaluation processes for the deployed technology. We also will be strongly communicating our outputs. In this context, what is the PharmaLedger platform? The PharmaLedger platform is intended to serve as a single source of trust for the pharma ecosystem and designed to be highly scalable and interoperable for efficient decentralized governance, wide adoption by the stakeholders of the healthcare ecosystem, and compliant with the extant and emerging standards and regulations. PharmaLedger has been designed to create the capabilities and infrastructure for a secure, permissioned, and auditable and patient-mediated exchange of data. For this purpose, as shown in the slide, we have created a four-layer architecture. In the upper layer of the architecture resides the blockchain solutions. Now we have the current solutions being deployed in the PharmaLedger project for the current use cases. But we foresee to have in the future also new applications that will expand and scale the PharmaLedger platform. The other three layers ensure data self-sovereignty for the new digital healthcare world, and which have been designed, integrated a new concept, which we call OpenDSUs. This concept is key and supports our platform. What is an OpenDSU? OpenDSU stands for Open Data Sharing Units, and it's the technology that works as a container for data and code being built in the blockchain. This container is cryptographically secure, anchored to the blockchain, and in control of the user. This means that the OpenDSU defines a standard manner of how to store data and code outside of the blockchain. I mean, on the off-chain. To support DSUs, we also integrate other key elements such as digital wallets, which allow users to interact with the blockchain. In PharmaLedger, right from the start of the project, our goal has been to be agnostic to the blockchain technology and remain as neutral as possible to the blockchain technology selected by each use case solution connected in the upper layer of the platform. For this purpose, the OpenDSUs are also blockchain technology agnostic, and they support any kind of programmable blockchain technology. Furthermore, the OpenDSUs support any kind of self-sovereign identities or other type of certificate standards. With this approach, we combine the benefits of blockchain, such as integrity, traceability, and non-repudiation, while preserving confidentiality and data privacy for the data owners. We at PharmaLedger want to remain technology neutral, so in the future, we can also integrate with new blockchain coming technologies. Now, I would like to comment a little bit, about the PharmaLedger use cases. The PharmaLedger use cases have been clustered in three domains of reference: health data, clinical trials, and supply chain. In the health data domain, we have two use cases: clinical trial recruitments and personalized medicine. The clinical trial recruitments aggregates clinical trials and screening criteria across the whole industry by anchoring on the blockchain the provenance of matching transactions, and thus, in this way, supporting trust to all parties. In the personalized medicine use case, we use blockchain in combination with analytics and artificial intelligence for supporting models or algorithms to improve healthcare provision. In the area of clinical trials, we are delivering two use cases: e-consent and the IoT devices use case. The e-consent aims at providing one trusted, immutable, and shared source of consent and trial data, supporting process automation in a trusted shared environment and permissioned access to data specified by the role in near real time. While in the IoT devices use case, we use blockchain to enhance and support the dynamic acquisition and processing of data from patients and medical devices in one consolidated view to accelerate clinical development and bring solutions to patients earlier. In the supply chain, we are developing 4 solutions for 4 different use cases in the areas of clinical supply traceability, finished good traceability, electronic leaflet or electronic product information, EPI, and anti-counterfeiting. The key priorities for these use cases are focused on driving patient safety, reliable product traceability, reducing fraud, and support the fight against counterfeiting and compliance with European regulation. In this context, the European regulators and the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Associations have implemented serialization of prescription drugs by the manufacturers with systemic control at the point of dispense, either pharmacies or hospitals, to solve the sectoral priorities aiming at balancing efficiency, ensuring patient safety, and cost control. For this purpose, PharmaLedger is working very hard with blockchain at product serialization processes, at saleable units, transversally through the blockchain, and transversally to the supply chain use cases. When putting together the use cases in PharmaLedger, we can see that they are linked and can be shown as part of an upstream or downstream path, depending on the stakeholder perspective. Overall, when looking at this, I really think we can say that although it has been done a great job in the supply chain reliability, we could see, for example, during the COVID pandemic, that the demand disruption could also be as unpredictable and problematic as the supply chain reliability. Thus, in PharmaLedger, we're using blockchain to support a network of connected partners with interoperable and secure data sharing units schemas for sharing data and processes in a transparent manner, while collaborating in real time, all the stakeholders. For PharmaLedger, this is a key issue. So we support dynamic supply, demand balancing, and effective supply chain planning. In this event, I would like to share more in depth the clinical supply chain use case that we have in PharmaLedger. At the top of the slide, you can see that the whole clinical supply process is there with the participation of the different stakeholders. This process is a global process and it starts with the delivery of raw materials at the manufacturing facilities. Further, it gets products to be labeled and distributed via logistics to end in the clinical setting, where patients get access to the investigational product. With PharmaLedger, we aim at having all processes and steps of the clinical supply chain linked together on a common ledger powered by the blockchain, providing access to all these actors of stakeholders to the relevant data points across the processes and across the network. With this in mind, we aim at overcoming several challenges, okay? And among those, we can mention, for example, the challenge that links with the lack of data visibility in clinical supply chain, where the sponsor has no access in real time to what is happening at the clinical site level. As usually, this visibility mostly reaches to the stakeholder that is next to you in the supply chain. This generates a lack of agile reaction, as well as potentially poor forecasts to actual consumption stock in a clinical trial. Also, there is a high effort and time invested in regulatory compliance for trials, especially this lack of data visibility and thus transparency makes that gathering of data through all the clinical supply chain gets to be time and effort consuming. The process is complex, but especially becomes complex or more complex, okay, when we think in the increasing global perspective that clinical trials are approaching. Another challenge is the limitation for improving processes, given the fact that many actors might be editing data in the data tracker. Then it is not easy to be secure regarding the reliability and integrity of data, and thus data capturing is also inconsistent. Last but not least, okay, the disrupted IT and the lack of easy traceability due to the fact of not having a single source of trust brings complexity and rigidness on the systems, meaning with this that the collecting data from multiple nodes across the supply chain still might provide an incomplete picture. Though sometimes this means that we can fail in providing the right user experience that our patients should receive and not supporting empowerment in patients as such. Personally, I think that the great value of data visibility is generated when you can take informed, knowledgeable, and timely decisions. Thus, we definitely see that through PharmaLedger, we can generate value in this use case. We can do it by improving the clinical supply processes, reducing time and effort to source and look for data. We believe that we can remove data inconsistencies in the layoffs also. We have potential for optimizing the clinical supply processes by integrating data that is ensured to be accurate across stakeholders or participants in the supply chain. In this clinical supply chain use case, we definitely are looking at building more capabilities, better data identification, authorship, data recording sourcing, and easier reporting and analytics, and so getting ready for future needs. Future needs such as preparing the path for further scenarios, such as it could be providing autologous therapies or direct shipping to patients. Linked to this context, we can say that something that COVID pandemic has made clear is that we were not ready to facilitate access to data in a way that researchers, scientists, doctors, governments, and pharma industry could share it to make it usable for us as patients, as society. So we really hope that PharmaLedger, as a trust-enabled solution, could create value to all stakeholders with a single login in this area, and thus support real-time monitoring through all the clinical values and supply chain in a single interoperable platform that manage, digitize, as well as accessible, immutable, and traceable data. We believe that PharmaLedger is relevant to this context. We really believe that all the use case solutions and applications on the top of PharmaLedger platform for the clinical trials, supply chain, as well as for health data domains will empower patients, increase digital trust among pharma supply chain and healthcare stakeholders, support medicine drug traceability and data privacy, as well as build a new culture of collaboration of sharing data in healthcare under enhanced security, compliance with data protection rules, and interoperability schemas. With this message, I would like to close the introduction to the PharmaLedger project, and it is my pleasure to pass it over the panel for discussing applying blockchain for end-to-end clinical supply management. Thank you very much.
Welcome, everyone. I'd like to have you all join us here in the live chat, fireside chat with the IMI PharmaLedger projects. You have two ways to be able to ask questions of the panelists. You can either post them here in the Zoom chat box, or you can post a question back in the Pathable platform chat box. I will be monitoring both of those boxes, so feel free to post questions in either. And would also like to remind you in the Pathable platform, virtual platform, there is a poll. So please do go over and fill out that poll. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn this fireside chat over to the moderator, Disa Choun. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. So welcome everyone to our Fireside Chat, Blockchain Consortium, the IMI PharmaLedger Project. I am your moderator. My name is Disa Choun. I'm the head of innovation within the clinical development at UCB. I have 15 plus years in the pharma industry, and I lead initiatives in the digital business transformation, focusing mainly in clinical innovation. And I started in 2017, the Fuse Blockchain Workgroup, and I'm one of the initial members of the Pharma that contributed to the proposal of the IMI project. So my role in this project is that I'm the co-lead of the clinical trial and health data marketplace domain use cases. And I'm joined today by a panel of experts and my peers from the IMI PharmaLedger Project. And I would like for each of them to introduce themselves. So I would like to start with Eugenia, Beltrán, or Xenia.
Hello, my name is Xenia Beltrán, and I'm head of big data at Life Supporting Technologies at Politécnica, University of Madrid. I am also the coordinator of PharmaLedger, and together with Disa, I co-lead the health data marketplace use cases for PharmaLedger. So it's a pleasure to be in this far chat.
Thank you, Xenia. Ingrid Klingmann.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hello, my name is Ingrid Klingmann. I am here in my function as the chairperson of EFGCP, the European Forum for Good Clinical Practice, which is a non-for-profit organization in Brussels for mostly working in Europe with different stakeholders that are involved in improving the conditions, the processes, the way forward for the clinical development primarily of new medicines and new devices. And the main activities are multi-stakeholder discussions, working parties, workshops to enable the discussion amongst all involved stakeholders, especially including the patients in a very intensive way, to find solutions for all type of different aspects in medicine and device development.
Thank you, Ingrid. And Chad Kotowski.
Yeah, so Chad Sklodosky, I work for Pfizer. I work in the digital clinical supply chain, which is a digital function embedded in our global clinical supply organization. And as a part of my role, I have responsibility for maintaining and enhancing our core solutions that support the clinical supply chain. But in addition, evaluating emerging technologies, blockchain being one of those. So I've been leading the clinical supply blockchain use case evaluation of blockchain for Pfizer for the last 3 years, and recently joined the PharmaLedger effort early last year.
Thank you, Chad, and welcome everyone. For those who missed Xenia's presentation, I would ask you to all to look at the kind of like a summary of the IMI project. But just to summarize for the people who just joined our fireside chat, IMI stands for Innovative Medicines Initiative. And PharmaLedger is the project regarding blockchain. It's a 3-year project, and right now we're in our second year. And it's partly funded by the European Union and also the FPI members, so the pharmaceutical companies in Europe. We have a total of 29 partners, 12 are in pharma, 2 patient organizations, 4 research centers and technical universities, 3 hospitals. So it's a big collaboration, I would say, especially in the European side. And there are mainly 3 areas of that we are basically exploring and piloting, and will be developing the platform. It's on the supply chain, the health data marketplace, and clinical trials. So with that brief summary, I will start with asking a question to all our panelists here. Why is the organization interested in participating in PharmaLedger? So anyone would like to take that first question?
So I can start. So yeah, again, I work for Pfizer, and we've been looking at exploring the use of blockchain in the clinical supply chain for a few years now. And so we've run some pilots. We've had some cross-industry grassroots efforts to try to grow the maturity of the technology within the industry. But there was one key thing that was missing, and that was having an infrastructure or the formalization of a consortia. And that's what PharmaLedger brought. It brought a group of 29 like-minded companies together for the cause of trying to create a better healthcare system built on blockchain. And that's what PharmaLedger brings to the table, and it's why Pfizer was eager to participate, because the fact that we have the backing of the European Union on this effort as well is another main driver. But just to have people who are willing to commit time, money, and resource to advancing the technology within our industry.
Thank you, Chad.
Yep.
Okay, I bring another aspect to the topic. As I mentioned before, we are an organization that is working on very different aspects of the medicines and device development process, from ethics to methodology to quality and patient engagement. And when we learned about let's say the potential that blockchain technology has, we felt that this is really a very important aspect for our activities and initiatives as well. So we thought it's really something that will help patients who are participating in the trial, and it will help people, patients afterwards, to get to their medicines faster, more reliably, to better medicines for various aspects, because we have different use cases here in this, or let's say applications that we are testing in this project or developing in this project. And so it was important for us, and that was what our community was really supporting, to offer support for input of the different stakeholders, and especially patients' view into the design phase of the project, so that we could contribute to making whatever comes out of this project even more relevant for patients, because that important aspect of patients and other users has been brought to the table from the beginning. And therefore, we were very happy when we were invited to join this project here.
Thank you.
Okay, and on our side, actually, we really were catch up also for the idea of the blockchain and emerging technologies, but not only for the idea that blockchain as a technology is really a catching up concept, is because for us, okay, our research also is well grounded in the healthcare environment. And the idea of having PharmaLedger was more than blockchain technology. It's actually a new way to share data. So actually sharing data and new schemas of sharing data, this is actually what really attracted us from the PharmaLedger project. Besides that, being a public-private partnership, being at the edge, working with large companies, with patient organizations, which are the end users, I think it's a great opportunity to have minimum viable products that really will be in pre-operational environment, okay, ready almost to be in the market. So it's a really, really great opportunities from all senses from our side and perspective.
Thank you all for answering this question. And I would agree. I mean, I think there's that sense of camaraderie within this project, and I think there's that element of knowledge sharing across the different companies. And I find that, part of the success that I've seen so far in our second year of this project is that, alignment of goals, but also, wanting to build something, for patients' need and for, how we can support the different stakeholders in implementing such platform and solution. So I would agree with all your comments. So thank you so much for that. So Chad, so can you explain the differences between clinical and commercial supply chain, and what are the key benefits that you see by using blockchain in this space?
Yeah, sure. So I think maybe before we start talking about differences, we talk about what's similar, right? So at the end of the day, we're both supply chains are there to deliver quality products to our patients. We share that in common, and that's our primary focus and our goals is to make the world a healthier place. But the key difference is that's about where the similarities end. Our supply chains are actually very different. Yes, we both have to manufacture, package, and distribute products across the globe. The main difference is around ownership of the asset itself, ownership of the drug. So for clinical trials, the investigational product is owned by the sponsor, the pharma company, throughout its entire life cycle. So all of the stakeholders that are involved in the packaging, labeling, distribution, and administration to the patients are all well aligned because we all have the same goal, the same intent to execute a highly efficient clinical trial. The difference is in the commercial space, that asset changes ownership. So there's buying and selling of that product throughout its life cycle, and therefore you lose some of that connection between the various companies, the various systems. So the commonality is our supply chains are highly distributed. They're insourced, outsourced, located across the globes, and there's many different systems and paper processes that are still involved in our supply chains that make connecting all of these data points very difficult. So the key benefits to this interconnected PharmaLedger platform is that it solves for this lack of transparency issue for both supply chains. And it essentially is the glue that connects those dots across the board. So if I'm a clinical site that might be doing, let's say, a dozen or let's say 36 different clinical trials with 10 different pharmaceutical companies, you probably have 10 different systems you need to interact with, 10 different paper processes, you name it. You're just multiplying how much redundancy you have. Whereas with a ideal, what our vision for this blockchain-enabled healthcare solution is that you would have, from a clinical site perspective, one single source of the truth to see all product coming from every sponsor, regardless which distributor it's coming through, and be able to better plan and manage your inventories at site, better manage your drug reconciliation practices. And if I'm a regulator, I can envision a world where you'd actually have permission to access to this information, where you can monitor the quality of the execution of the clinical trial real time, as opposed to these really labor-intensive one-off efforts that looks back 6 months at data or paper and tries to make an analysis of the integrity of the trial. So I think more real-time access to information, the benefits are throughout the supply chain, and at the end of the day, the patients benefit the most by ensuring that they're getting a quality product at the end of the day. So.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Chad. And I guess one of the benefits that, of course, we've been talking throughout the use cases about the anti-counterfeiting as well. So that's one of the biggest advantages in this area. Yes.
Yep.
And talking about patients, Chad, and I'm going to now direct my question to Ingrid. I mean, which roles patients can or should play in PharmaLedger to increase the acceptance of this technology in the future?
Before I answer that, come to that question, may I make one point to Chad's comments, please? We are facing now quite a bit of changes at the moment with Corona, with the pandemic, insofar as now suddenly patients in many studies become aware that the study medication comes from somewhere. Because when they cannot get to the site, there's the question, how does the medication get to them when they have to stay at home, when there's a lockdown? So suddenly that idea, where is my medication coming from, who has control over that, becomes really relevant and also obvious to patients. So will it be difficult to extend, so to say, the chain from the site to the patient through the system? Is there a possibility to make also that step clearly more secure and understandable for patients?
Yeah, absolutely. And we view PharmaLedger as a means to that end. Because right now, you're absolutely right. The industry has had to adapt quickly. And oftentimes what that means is creating paper processes or relying on third-party logistics providers, their systems, in order to capture that last quarter of a mile to the patient's home, let's say. But that you're absolutely correct. From a patient perspective, you want to see not only that the drug got to you on time, but all the information about the product along the way. Did it maintain its temperature? Were there any sort of events that may have compromised the integrity of that product? Was it, the expiration date extended at some point? All those things are important to a patient. And I agree. And that's part of our objective. That's part of our vision, is to be able to connect not just the status of the product as it changes, but all the information about it as it flows throughout its life cycle, so that you as a patient, all of us as a patient, can be rest assured that the product is delivered on time, in the right temperature, the right condition, and you can have confidence that it's a quality product. So yes, I think this, actually, if anything, the pandemic has accelerated people's interest in what we're doing with PharmaLedger, to say, why haven't we already done this? It's easier said than done, but it's definitely a part of what we have captured requirements as a part of our use case. It might not be a part of the MVP, but it's definitely a part of the vision as we move forward.
Okay, very good. And I imagine that also the inspectors will be happy to have such a system, because they will then be more reliably able to trace what happened with the study medication until it came really, even under these conditions, to the patient.
Exactly.
Okay, sorry, now I come back to your question, Disa.
Actually, that was a good discussion. I just want to add as well, and the whole point about blockchain is actually providing that trust, and I think that's a key component of it. And it's all about that transparency, right? So it's not just for patients itself, but it's also the transparency for all the different stakeholders that are involved in that process. So I think that's why we're here today in this very exciting project. But yes, Ingrid, I'll ask again the question. So which roles patients can or should play in PharmaLedger to increase the acceptance of this technology in the future?
Well, you mentioned already the keyword, and this is trust. So what we are interested in is that we find ways how we can, from the beginning, enable the required level of trust, or an increasing level of trust in the end user, once the technology is available and is going to be broadly used. And therefore, we find it's very important that experienced patients who have experience with their disease, but also experience with the medicine's development process and the medical device development process, what we call patient experts, that they get involved in the preparation workout of the concept and the technology, to make sure that all the aspects that they consider relevant get really taken into consideration. And in this way, we lay the ground for the trust development from the beginning. And this can be done, and it's happening. That is what we are doing, that we bring these patient experts together with the developers of the different use case scenarios, to have a direct conversation about the needs, expectations, hurdles, differences, problems, so that they can jointly find solutions that are then really relevant for improving the acceptability and the trust afterwards of the patients when they are using the technology in the different areas that we are having in blockchain, in the PharmaLedger project, the different use cases that we are working on here. So it's focus groups that we are organizing between the different players. There is also something we have not yet done, but I think it should be done, that we do semi-structured interviews with experts from different areas of indications, different regions in Europe and in the world. And also that afterwards, once we are in year 3 of the project, we will then be able to engage the patients that we are working with, to launch discussions with broader groups of patients in different settings, in different scenarios, to get a broader input on their concerns and needs, discuss what is going to happen and what they can also do to further, let's say, prepare their communities for the acceptance of the technology and the options that we are offering here.
And thank you, Ingrid, because what you're just mentioning just now, it's about kind of like leading that change and it's the change of mindset as well, and involving the patients who are actually the key users at the end of this platform. And that's the idea, that we need to include them when we're developing this type of solutions. And it's good that we have at least 2 patient organizations working with us in this project, and hopefully, we'll develop something that will be useful for the different communities.
That is patient engagement in the proper sense. It is not just listening to them, it is bringing them to the table from the beginning and finding solutions together.
Exactly.
So I'm very happy that PharmaLedger is doing that we are showcased here on how it can work.
I agree. Thank you. So earlier, Marianne mentioned that we actually put a question in the poll, and well, I think a lot of people already answered. But before we jump into the results of that poll, I'll ask my next question to Xenia. And Xenia, how do you see the potential adoption of blockchain in clinical supply chain industry?
Well, I think there is potential. I mean, the issue is that I think right now 3/4 of the industry or the organizations are doing something at this respect. Okay, actually they have started. They are doing it this year, and they probably will be doing next year. So the issue, in my view, and my perception, is that that right now this adoption is inconsistent. Okay, so still need significant collaboration challenges. Okay, both upstream and downstream somehow. There is also needs for business applications and tools. Okay, I think this is this need of connecting these dots. Okay, all together through the supply chain. Still, there are many challenges and many things to improve. Okay, especially responsiveness and resilience, in my view, to protect. Okay, not only through for the traceability and information through the value chain or the supply chain. Okay, but also for future disruption, as it has happened with the COVID little bit. Okay, so I think right now still there are many delays, many challenges that have to go with information visualization, disruption, transportation balancing. Have a quick response. Okay, from the upstream to the downstream. There is a kind of a loss of ability to have forecast. Okay, with respect to the products in many cases. And I think something that COVID has changed is that not only the demand is unpredictable, something that was quite stable like the supply. Okay, and right now it has become also unpredictable. And I think that when that happens, okay, the relationship in between the supply and the demand gets variable. And when that gets variable, you don't have that agility to respond. So somehow we all think, or at least that's my perception from also the group in part of PharmaLedger, that something needs to be done. Okay, I think blockchain is a technology, more than a technology, an infrastructure that really supports this chain of data, as said before, that really provide this kind of visibility. I think maybe to have this kind of universal view of the end-to-end visibility, it might take time. Okay, probably it's on, I'm not sure if in the infancies, but I mean, not that much developed. Okay, in my view, when sometimes we have talks, my perception is that it's a lot of patching little bit, but I think it's coming, and I think they all agree that there is a need to manage all the challenges plus potential disruptions. And one of the issues in my perception is resilience. And actually, projects like PharmaLedger that are technology agnostic and that are open to any other new technology plus any of the current blockchain technologies to be put at the top, okay, really allow to have this visibility, this privacy, this agile, okay, to be agile and agility and transparency and trust. And for me, when you add these 4 things, okay, you really try to get resilience. So I think in 1 or 3 years, probably it will be considered as a quick win. So I think it has a lot of potential, but it's still unstable.
Yes, and thank you, Xenia. Yes, I will agree. I mean, I guess it would take a few years for us to get there. And I'm just looking now at the poll. So the question that we asked the audience was, do you think the blockchain supply chain solution will be adopted by your company in the near future? So between 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5, 5 to 7, or beyond 7, or not at all, or not applicable. And so far the response has been, high level, 67% so far who responded said not applicable, 33% said between 3 to 5 years. So I guess there's still a lot of work from our end to do in order to kind of build this platform, of course, and basically show the value and the ROI in this case. So, companies, like us, the different organizations will end up using this platform. Okay, good. So let me move on to the next question, Chad. So in general, how does the clinical supply chain fit with the rest of the PharmaLedger use case?
Yeah, sure. So there's definitely a lot of connection points. For some of them, some are stronger than others, but fundamentally, you don't get to the commercial use case if you don't have a successful clinical trial and get market authorization, right? But beyond that, I think one of the biggest connections I see is between the patient recruitment and clinical supply chain, because one of the biggest challenges we have in the clinical supply chain is being able to predict when and where a patient might come from. So what happens is, as you're planning for a clinical trial, you're having to ship drug all over the world for the chance that you might recruit a patient. So any insight, any greater insight as to improved patient matching capabilities would only allow us to better predict or plan for where that patient might come from, and thereby reduce that overage, and then overall reduce the cost of conducting that clinical trial, and be able to do it quicker, because it takes, in some cases, weeks or months to get drug into a country. So being able to better plan and predict would allow us to execute more quickly. So I think, to me, that's one of the biggest connection points. And then obviously with the commercial supply chain, once we receive the market authorization and all of the connections between the e-leaflets and everything that goes into the commercialized product, again, gives you that holistic view, really from drug discovery all the way to patient consumption, which is really amazing.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Chad. So in terms of, I see some of the questions already asked in the chat, so maybe we'll go into those in a few minutes. But one last question I would like to ask the panel. How blockchain supports patient centricity and reduces the patient burden? And I just want to ask, Xenia, maybe you want to start with that question. Maybe Ingrid, if you want to elaborate a little bit more from your perspective, and of course, Chad.
Yeah, I don't know yet, because one thing that we have heard from patients as first reactions was, oh my God, this is again new technology. How will we be able to deal with it? Will we have to learn a lot of new things and a lot of new ways of doing things? Will that be different from study to study? Because especially chronically ill patients participate during their life in several studies. Will that always be something different? Will it be fair in access for everybody? What about patients who are not so IT literate, so illiterate, IT illiterate patients? Will they be excluded then from participating in a clinical trial where there is such technology, for example, for electronic informed consent or recruitment or whatever? The other use cases. So I think we have a number of very practical aspects that we will need to answer first, so to say, for ourselves, and then be able to communicate in a very efficient way to people to make sure that they dare to start talking about it, thinking about it, and feeling comfortable using it, working with it. So I think there's a lot of need for communication and efficient communication and trust building activities before this will really be broadly part of our daily life. So I don't know yet. I hope we will be successful, but I don't know whether we will really be able to give patients the understanding or the promise that it will not be an additional burden. In contrary, it will be a relief and an improvement for their conditions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ingrid. And I think you have a valid point, because that's definitely one of the questions that we've been discussing also within the PharmaLedger project. And I also, sometimes just think about countries who already have in place blockchain in EMR systems and how they access. I mean, Estonia being a good example, you know, everyone has a mobile phone. So no one, I mean, it's kind of like it takes, it's not just about blockchain itself, but it's just about, you know, digitalization and how people kind of like embrace that. And I think, you know, it's not just a group of companies or, you know, organizational consortium that comes together, but it's almost like a wider support that's needed or network. Because in this case, of course, Estonia being a very good example, you know, it was a government decision. It was a national decision to go ahead. So I guess everyone just had to be in the 21st century using the latest technology, in other words.
Yeah, but the problem is that patients tend to be older people. And at least at the moment, the older generation is clearly not so familiar or comfortable with adding new technologies. I mean, I see this with my daughter. She grew up with this thing, and she's quite often embarrassed about my inability to easily manage all the different tools and options that I have on my mobile phone. And I think that is what we are going to see for quite some time. The more sophisticated the systems are going to be, and the more they will be part of our daily life. No? So I think to make sure that we really get the weakest into the boat will be very important.
Yes, and I think your earlier comment about, you know, involving patients in the design is so critical to make sure that it's user-friendly in every sense. So, and I just want to hand over to Xenia if you have anything to add.
Yes, I mean, I fully agree with Ingrid, okay, and I fully agree with there is a large share of the population that is in that condition. But also, I like to think that that blockchain is not really a tool. It's not a new technology. It's an infrastructure like it is the cloud. Let's say that way. So actually, nobody sees. Okay, right now you say everybody has a phone, but the people doesn't know anymore if they have an SD or they don't have an SD, if they save in the cloud or not. Okay. I think in this co-design phase, it's really good to really let the people that is a technology that is very privacy oriented, and they really will allow you to be empowered to be you, the one that will be consent that you will be using your data, or that someone will have your permission to use your data. And I think it's something to be transferred as a technology as such. Okay, so I think as part of to really get and let's say user friendly with the technology, it will not be more than the applications that will be on the top of this infrastructure as such. So actually, that's something that if the people get used to several of the other applications, also might take somehow. I think the important message to be transferred is that you know, as you say, millennials, okay, naturally take the technology. Blockchain is a technology that naturally take privacy inside and by designing it. So I think it's the message for many of these people also.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Xenia. And Chad, any comments from your end?
No, just a quick comment that one of the underlying themes around all of this, at least for the clinical supply use case, is around simplicity. Trying to simplify things for all the stakeholders is of the primary focus. And if we can't achieve that, then what are we doing? So, you know, at the end of the day, it really comes down to making things as efficient and as simple as possible, and that meaning for the patients as well, if and when they need to have some direct involvement. So it's definitely one of the aspirations, and it's good that we have people like Ingrid and the organization that she represents to give us that type of feedback. But I'm sure it'll be a learning process as we develop. So.
But we do that together, and this is the interesting thing, no? We are learning together how to do that in the best way.
Yep.
And thank you so much. So what I will do now, I'm going to go into the chat, and there's some questions that's being posted. So I would like to give the opportunity to answer some of this. So first of all, I just want a quick update on the poll, because now we have 4 more people responding. So 14%, they think that between 1 to 3 years that we see an adoption of the supply chain. Then 43% 3 to 5 years, and unfortunately 43% also said not applicable at this point in time. Right, so let me go to our first question. So from Tom, so he said, so he asked, does the blockchain encompass the biospecimen that are collected for assay? And do you have visibility into that segment of the supply chain?
So I can speak maybe real briefly to that. And Xenia, I think you may have responded in the other seminar or the other your presentation, but biospecimen is definitely on the roadmap. It has very similar business drivers as clinical or commercial supply chain. It is a chain of custody that needs to be tracked. It is very important, and there are similar pinch points along the way. As we, especially during the pandemic, realized we need to have better planning tools around that. As a part of the prioritized use cases for PharmaLedger, I don't believe it was in the top eight, but it is a part of the longer term vision. So it is on the radar. It just wasn't a part of this first MVP, but I don't know if anybody has anything to add.
Yes, that's correct, Chad. It was one of the use cases. I mean, we came up with, I guess, close to 50 use cases in overall the 3 areas of the domain. And we discussed about this, and you're right. And one thing about biospecimen is also about the e-consenting and the reconsenting, because that's another thing that we discuss about how we can use that information or the biospecimen is collected for example, for further research. So that's another thing that we touch on, but it's definitely in the roadmap, but it's not part of the 3 years project that we have. Yeah. Thank you. Right, so the next question from Ari. While PharmaLedger builds this amazing infrastructure, what tools, technologies will be needed to utilize this infrastructure? Do you plan to build tools for all of the use cases, or do you plan to allow others to build tools that can utilize the PharmaLedger blockchain? That's a great question. Xenia, would you like to take this one?
Yes, sure. Actually, right now, yes, again, the use cases and the applications that are being on the top of the PharmaLedger architecture respond to, let's say, these specific needs that they have been brought as use cases to actually generate impact, okay, and actually see the impact and generate evidence of what the blockchain is doing and could be validated in these spaces. Okay, we are reaching to pre-operational environment, but it's true that since the project started, okay, there is a package going through all the 3 years that is for governance. The idea is to really scale later and actually be able to have new applications, and for sure from new commerce, okay, to have applications on the top of the PharmaLedger Plus, okay, finishing the ones that we are taking to pre-operational environment.
Thank you, Xenia. Any additional comments from the panel?
Well, I can just speak to the clinical supply use case, and what we're developing as a part of our solution is also a mobile or tablet interface, so that if you're a large sponsor like Pfizer, you can maybe feed data from your source systems. But if you're a small biotech startup that doesn't have robust systems, you can actually log the data on the blockchain through this UI that allows us or anybody to participate in this network, whether you're a major pharma or not. So that is definitely one of the applications we're considering for our initial MVP solution.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chad. And with this, actually, we're close to concluding this fireside chat. And first of all, would like to thank all our panelists for all your expertise and your information about the PharmaLedger project, and also thank the audience for participating in the poll and also for the questions. And I hope you'll stay throughout the day. There's more coming up, more discussions about blockchain, so please stay tuned.
And I just want to also extend my thanks to great discussion. I was frantically taking notes. Look forward to hearing updates for next year. And thank you all for joining. And yes, join us at the next session. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.